Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Let's Edit with Avid Media Composer tutorial. And in this lesson, I want to talk a little bit about power keyboard shortcuts. And what I want to do is to show you the keyboard shortcuts that I've used for the last 20 to 25 years, why they work for me, why hopefully they'll work for you, and maybe teach you a little bit about some great tips, tricks, and tools that you may not even know you had at your disposal to help speed up your workflow in every edit session. Now, as always, before we get rolling, I want to give a big shout out to Video Guys, our sponsor. Don't forget, if you're looking for Media Composer subscription licenses, head on down to the show notes below for the links. You can head on over to Video Guys' website, get that coupon code of MC101 to get 5% off your subscription license. And as always, I want to remind you that if you are interested in one-on-one Media Composer training, you can always send me an email at kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. All of the lessons are recorded for you to save for your future reference. And I always give discounts if you want to get in and do multiple lessons to get you up to speed on whatever project you happen to be working on. And last but certainly not least, I want to remind you that if you find this tutorial useful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it across social media to help us get the word out there about Media Composer to all those editors in Premiere or in Resolve who maybe need to jump into Media Composer and get a project done, or maybe you've just been away from Media Composer for a while and you just want to freshen up on some great tips and tricks. Hopefully everybody can get something, whether it's a lot or even just that one little tidbit out of every lesson that we put up on the YouTube channel. Alright, so as you can see, we are in Avid Media Composer. Of course, for our keyboard settings, we have to head to our settings. Control-Shift and equals, Command-Shift and equals for all of my Mac friends out there. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to scroll down to the keyboard section. You'll notice I have three keyboard layouts here. One is my standard keyboard layout, one is a Premiere Pro layout, one is a DaVinci Resolve layout. Obviously, if you're coming from one of those applications, a great place to start to get you rolling and up to speed as quickly as possible. Then you can start adding in other keyboard shortcuts as you go. What I'm going to do here is double click on my keyboard settings, just drag them down to the lower left hand corner here. I'm just going to close the settings window. And what I'm going to do is open and close the command palette as necessary. All right. So basically, if you remember back a few lessons, I talked about my keyboard settings, and they've pretty much been the same for about 20 years inside of Media Composer. There's been a couple minor changes, but more or less I want to draw your attention to the function keys across the top of the keyboard settings, and I want to draw your attention to the shift toggle. When I hold shift, I have a couple of other keyboard settings in here as well, or basically a couple of other shortcuts, the Y key and the F2 key, but everything else in here is the standard Media Composer layout on the keyboard that it's really been from the beginning, I guess, if you want to say that. I don't alter that. And again, I said the reason why is that if I sit down and I need to start editing at another location right away, I don't want to muck around with that keyboard, because then I'm constantly trying to find, where did I put that key? What was the original default shortcut for that? Blah, blah, blah. Then it's just going to cause downtime, which you don't want. All right. So this is a great reason why you want to get in and really shortcut your F keys, shortcut the shift keys, but leave the standard keyboard layout the way that it is, just for ease of use when working in other locations. If you work at your own home office or your own office, that's really not going to be an issue. All right. Now, believe it or not, the first keyboard setting I had right up here, F2, didn't used to be what it currently is. So what did it used to be? Well, back in the day, I used to do a lot of digitizing. Yeah, that's right, capturing from videotape. And F2 used to be batch capture for me, but it's not batch capture anymore because maybe about a year and a half ago, Avid stopped supporting the caps lock key being for audio scrub. And audio scrub, something I use all the time, something everybody uses all of the time. I'm constantly toggling that on and off. Well, once they removed it from being caps lock, which was not changeable, it became a mappable command for the keyboard. So what I have done is I've now taken my audio scrub and mapped it to F2 on the keyboard. It's very simple. I can simply hit F2, and you'll notice that as soon as I do this, hit F2, I actually have another shortcut for it right here at the top of the timeline. So as I toggle it on and off, you'll notice that. And then if I come down here and I just start going through frame by frame, you'll see that we got some audio scrubbing happening, which is exactly what we want. Now, if you're looking to add this to your keyboard shortcuts, what you can simply do is Command or Control and 3 to call up the command palette. What you're going to do is head on over to the Play category, and you will see Digital Audio Scrub right here that you can map to the keyboard or the Composer window. All right, so I'm just going to close that, and let's move on to my next keyboard shortcut. My next keyboard shortcut, F3 on the keyboard, is again a tool that I use all the time. And in this case, it is an actual tool. I'm simply going to hit F3 on the keyboard, and it is for my audio mixer. Obviously, something you're going to need no matter what production you're going to be working on, whether it's a simple 2-channel audio track that you're just going to need to raise the levels up, raise them down, or whether it's an entire mix you have where maybe you just need to bring the master volume down like 3 dB, like such. The audio mixer is the tool that you're going to use to do that. Now you'll notice again, this is a tool that is navigated to up in Tools, and you can actually find it right here, Audio Mixer. Now you'll remember I talked previously, if you want to map menu items to buttons on your keyboard, what you're simply going to do is call up that command palette and make sure that you have menu to button reassignment selected. So this way, if you choose one of your other buttons here, I'll just choose this one here. Actually, let's choose, I think I'm just going to choose this button here because I don't actually really do anything with it. I'll just come to Tools. Let's just choose Color Info, and you'll notice immediately that keyboard shortcut has now been updated to Color Info. All right, so the next keyboard shortcut we have, F4, is for a locator or a marker. What I'm going to do is simply navigate down the timeline right to about here. Now we know markers or locators, very, very handy to have. I'm just going to type in, maybe we don't like this shot. There we go. Very good. And I'm just simply going to come down, say OK. You'll see that that marker or locator has been added to my timeline. You'll also notice that I have it as a red marker in my keyboard shortcuts. Keep in mind that if you select the marker itself, you can then come in and choose it to be whatever color you want. I'll just make it yellow here. And also keep in mind that if you head back to the command palette, you head on over to the other section, or maybe it's the more section. I always get those two confused. It's the more section. You'll see by default, I have the red marker chosen, but down here, I could actually have any of the different colors as the default and then get in and switch them as I need them. What I'm going to do, simply close the command palette, and to remove that marker from my timeline, I'm simply going to hit the backspace key when I'm parked on that marker, and it will be deleted from my timeline. Now we're going to talk more about markers coming up in later lessons because there's a lot more going on with them than what I just showed you, but markers are something I use all the time. Now what I've also done here is I've added an effect to my timeline. Now I'm going to turn off audio scrubbing, so I'm simply going to hit F2 to turn that off. There we go, very nice. And you'll see that I have an effect here on this shot. Now keep in mind, this effect could be a dissolve, it could be a 3D warp effect, which basically has zoomed in on the shot. It could be any effect that's supported inside of Media Composer. Now, as I'm sure you are aware as an editor, you're constantly playing around with effects, whether they're dissolves, shorten them, lengthen them, put wipes in, you're going to add them, you're going to remove them, which is why F5 on my keyboard is mapped to remove effect. This again works with dissolves, it works with any effect. I'm simply going to hit F5 on the keyboard. You'll see that that effect then disappears. I do not have it here. If I had a dissolve added in here, we'll just add that in like such. Works exactly the same way. Simply park yourself right near that dissolve, hit F5, and it will be removed. And of course, if you want to find the remove effect command, again, head back to that command palette. It's in the effects section. You'll find it right here, remove effect. All right. Now the next keyboard shortcut is one of my favorites. It's the add edit command. It's something I use all of the time. And in this case, let's just say I needed to add maybe another shot in. I wasn't sure where it's going to happen. You'll always have that producer that sits next to you saying, okay, add it right here. So what I always like to do is I like to back up. I'll just hit play on the keyboard. When I get to the section I want and add it right here, I'm just going to hit F6 on the keyboard. And as soon as I stop, you'll see that an edit has been added right there, which tells me exactly where that edit point needs to happen. Now, keep in mind, you might hear, after you've added the edit into your timeline, that edit that's now been added referred to as one of two things, either a through edit or a match frame edit. They're basically both the same thing, just meaning that the frame that's before the edit and the frame that's after the edit are sequential in the shot that they came from. Now what I really like to use this command for here is if I add another video track, what I'm going to do, simply come back, I'm going to hit play on the keyboard, and let's just say we have some music pounding along going bum, 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 bum. Instead of, the music track that I currently have in there, you'll see that as soon as I hit stop, we now have the edit points added to our timeline. Very cool. So now instead of me having to mark an in point, hit play, and be like, okay, where am I going to add that next edit? Okay, let me stop here. Let me go back. You can see that I've literally just done almost a complete edit without actually having any footage added in my timeline. So what I'm going to do is just undo that, Command and 3. You can find the add edit command, of course, in the edit section. You can find add edit right here. All right. Now, what I have mapped to 7 and 8 are, again, much like the add edit, two keys that I probably use 1,000 times a day, and I always seem to use them in conjunction with each other, and that is match frame and find bin. Now, I want to point out that I actually have match frame mapped to F7, find bin mapped to F8, but if you take a look at your composer window, you'll notice that we have match frame right here as F7 and find bin mapped here as F8. So how do these two commands work, and why do they sort of go, I guess, hand in hand with each other? Well, let me show you. So let's take, I don't know, this shot right here, and let's just say I wanted to find maybe an alternate take or an alternate angle, using a clip that's somewhere located in my project. Well, normally what happens is you keep all the takes together, sort of as I've grouped them together in our footage folders here, our footage bins. So the first thing I want to know is, well, where is this shot? I really like to see that shot in the preview window. So I'm going to hit F7 to match frame. And what it's going to do is Media Composer is going to take a look at this frame right here, and it's going to find it for me and bring that entire clip up here. So if we have multiple takes, I can now go through the multiple takes to find the one that I would like to use. However, maybe I've already divided this clip up into subclips, and I have 8 or 9 subclips that are in the bin that represent the different takes. That's where I would use I'll call it its partner shortcut of find bin to show me the bin that take, or in this case, that clip is located in. And again, this could have been, 50 subclips of all different angles, etc., etc. So that's why if I come here and I go match frame find bin, or if I come here and I go match frame find bin, you'll see how they really go together hand in hand. And I'm literally constantly F7, F8, F7, F8, F7, F8 all day long. All right. So that's why those two keys are so essential to quickly find your footage and potentially to use alternate takes, or maybe you need to find a different section of an interview. And if you want to find those keyboard shortcuts, don't worry, you can always head on over to other, and they're actually located right here, match frame and find bin. Now, the next keyboard shortcuts I actually have to show you by using the keyboard here as opposed to actually using the keyboard shortcut, because it actually conflicts with the Camtasia application that I am recording with. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Here's another great keyboard shortcut. In Media Composer, it's referred to as collapse. So what exactly is a collapse? Well, a collapse is a Media Composer term for a nest. So if, for example, let's just take some of these shots here. I'm just going to stack them all on top of each other here. Hold on. We'll stick that one there. We'll stick this one up here. We'll stick that one up there. And let's just say hypothetically, we have a whole bunch of different shots that are moving across the frame, left to right, up and down, to make a little visual montage. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to select the entire duration of those clips, make sure that I have all the tracks selected, and I would hit F9 on the keyboard, but again, it conflicts with the recording application. So what I'm actually going to do is just simply hit collapse here at my keyboard, and you'll see that it has collapsed all those clips down into a non-destructible nest of all of them. Now, of course, that does beg the question, how would you actually step in and see what is actually contained in this nest? Couple ways that you can do that. You can step into the nest by simply using the step in or the step out command. You'll see I can step into that nest and see exactly what's going on. And then I can step back out to get me back to the timeline, or I can simply just double click on the actual effect itself. Now keep in mind, That was for a collapse. That will work with any nested effect. So if you've got a bunch of effects nested on top of each other, you can simply double click on the effect and it will open it up to show you all of the layers or effects contained within that nest. All right. So let me just undo that just to put everything back the way that I had it here. I'm actually going to go back a little bit farther because I want to have this effect back on everything. We got a couple more at the top of the keyboard, and then I have a couple more to show you. Now, the next one that I have is Modify Clip. Now, why would I ever need Modify Clip? Let me give you a great example of where I would need Modify Clip. What I'm going to do is just double click on this clip right here. Now, Modify Clip is one that I used to use all the time, especially when digitizing. Maybe you digitized a tape that had the wrong tape number. You could easily switch tape numbers. If you wanted to assign specific time codes, let's say to After Effects, QuickTime movies that you'd imported in or linked and consolidated to, you could add specific time codes to them using the Modify Clip command. But here's where I use it more than anything these days. You'll see I have it mapped to F10. Again, I can't hit F10 because it's going to conflict with the recording software. But let me hit F10 here. Let me just make sure I have the clip selected. There we go. You'll see that that's actually a bit of an interesting situation. So what I'm going to do here, because it won't let me do both, is I'm going to go to Clip and I'm going to come down to Modify. And I'm just going to select Modify Clip this way. It's basically the same as hitting the keyboard shortcut, all right? And you'll see that we have a whole bunch of different options in here. We can set time code, drop, non-drop. That's a big one. Set the time code by field, the increment time code, set track, set source. But for me, the big one that I use in here all the time is to set multi-channel audio. Now, there's many cases where you may bring in something that is dual mono and you'd like to make it stereo, or it's stereo, you'd like to make it dual mono. This is where you can do that. So for example, in this case here, let me just move the keyboard back over here. You'll see that we have a dual mono clip. Now I'm just going to say for argument's sake that I would really like this clip to be stereo. All I'm going to do is I'm going to select the clip. I can come back up to Clip, or I can right click on it, come down to Modify and say Modify Clip, or use my keyboard shortcut of F10. And all I'm going to do is head right down here to Set Multi-Channel Audio. And I'm going to link tracks 1 and 2 together. And I'm simply going to say OK. And you'll now see that they appear as a stereo track over here in the preview window. So that's what you're going to utilize Modify Clip for. Again, I'm just going to set it back the way that I had it. I'll just Modify Clip here. You'll see you have a bunch of options in here. Another one I use all the time, set time code drop, non-drop, is one that I use all the time as well. All right. Okay, couple more here. This is a very common one. It's the make subclip command. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take our multiple take shot here, and we'll just call that the first take right there. I'm just going to mark an out point right there. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over to my keyboard here, simply hit make subclip, because again, F11 conflicts with the recording application. But this is how I could quickly get in and just subclip a bunch of clips by simply in, out, and then hit F11, in, out, F11. And we'll do one more here, in, out, F11. All right, there we go. Perfect. So you can see this is a great way to make subclips. Now, if you didn't know, you can also make subclips by simply, once you have an in and out point marked, grabbing this little master clip icon. You'll see it's already sort of given it away by saying create shortcut, and by simply dragging it into your bin. But for me, I prefer using the keyboard shortcut F11. It is so much faster. It's one that I use again all the time, especially when breaking down interviews or just to get the actual part of the shot that I want to use. Just making those subclips quick and simple. And last but certainly not least, I have the fade effect command. Now, why do I use fade effect? Well, let me show you. What I'm going to do is simply navigate up to the clip drop down. I'm just going to create a new title. Now, keep in mind, this will work with any effect that you have applied that's a standard Media Composer effect. I don't know if it works with third-party effects. I would have to double check it. But what I'm going to do is just put stop in here with giant exclamation marks. And remember, nothing says screaming in your face like the impact font. Let's just make it about, I don't know, 85. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so let's take this, stretch it out. And what we're going to do is I'm simply going to save this out. I'm going to say save. I'm just going to save it to the sequences bin because I'm just going to delete it anyways. That's totally fine. I'm going to say save. And I'm just going to apply it to the video track above. Now again, keep it nice and short. There we go. Let's make sure I actually have the in point marked. Very nice. All right. So you'll see there's my title that appears. And normally how I see people add fades to an effect like this, or really any effect in general, is to step into the effect. They're going to come, they're going to add a keyframe here, they're going to come back, they're going to take the opacity down, they're going to come down here, they're going to add another keyframe, they're going to come over here, add another keyframe. You see how this is going. This is already getting to be way too much, when in reality what I would really like is just a keyboard shortcut like F12. Now I hit F12 off screen, so I'm just going to drag it back over here. You'll see that Media Composer is going to prompt me, say, well, how much of a fade up and fade down do you want to add? Well, I don't know. How about 5 frames and 5 frames? And as soon as I say go, what we now have is a 5-frame fade up and a 5-frame fade out. Literally lightning quick. Now again, I use this with titles all the time. It can be used with really any standard Media Composer keyboard shortcut, and you will be all set to go. Now, before I get in and show you the last two, and I'm going to show you a bonus one as well, what I'm going to do is simply head back to the command palette. What I want to do is just point out that collapse is found in the other tab. It's found right here. Now again, keep in mind you can search for all these right here if you want to. The modify clip is actually from a menu command. The make subclip command you will always find over in the edit tab, way over here on the right hand side. And last but certainly not least, fade title you will always find, or pardon me, fade effect you will always find in the effects category, and you'll see it right here. Now believe it or not, the last two keyboard shortcuts I actually have to deal with effects, and I actually utilize the shift key on the keyboard, and you'll find them right here. One is to step into effects mode, and the other is to render an effect. So how does this work? Well, I purposely left that effect on track 1 on the shot. This is a 3D warp effect, and what I'd like to do is to step in and just make a very basic scale adjustment to it. So how do we actually get into this effect to make it actually work, or to utilize it? Well, there's a couple ways that you can do it. You can step into it right here by using effects mode, or you'll see that I already have it mapped onto my keyboard with Shift and Y. I'm simply going to hit Shift and Y, and by doing this you will now have access to all of the parameters of any effect that you happen to have in your timeline. Now keep in mind this also applies to frame flex. If frame flex is actually applied to your clip, you will be able to get in by stepping into effects mode and utilizing the effects editor to get in and make changes to whatever parameter you want to make changes to. All right, so this is a fantastic way for you to quickly get in instead of constantly going back to the keyboard to get into effects mode. Now, of course, as much as these effects are real time, if you start stacking 100 of them on top of each other, you're going to run out of real-time capabilities real quick. So I always have Shift F2 mapped to render clip. So as soon as I hit it, it's going to ask me, where do I want to render this effect to? In this case, it's going to Media 3, but I can really send that to any one of my drives so that no matter what happens, I'll always ensure that I get real-time playback of my effects in my timeline. Now, of course, because both of those two keyboard shortcuts are actually effect shortcuts, you'll see that if I come to effect, to step into effects mode actually is over in other, because it's actually part of the different modes. Trim mode, source record mode, there's effects mode right there. And you'll see that if I come back over here to effects, to render the effect, you'll find it right there. And if I hold Shift on the keyboard, you'll see it right here and right here. Now, last but certainly not least, I want to throw this one in here at the end, just because, to be honest, it's something I use all the time, and I'm surprised I've never mapped it to a keyboard shortcut, and I don't know why I haven't, but it's the extend key that I have mapped to the composer window. So how does it work? What I'm going to do is just remove that in and out point. Let's say hypothetically I'd like to take this clip and extend it back to where my time bar is parked right now. What a lot of people will do is they'll go into trim mode, they'll grab the sort of the head of the trimmer, they'll bring it back, etc., etc. I don't like to do that. What I like to do is just to say, well, this is where I'd like the new in point of this shot to be, and I simply utilize the extend key, and boom, it's done just like that. Now, again, to be honest, I should actually have that mapped to the keyboard, because again, that's one like match frame and fine bin that I use 1,000 times a day. But for some reason, I've always just had it mapped there, and it's, you know, after 20 years, I'm sorry, my muscle memory is always going back to that place on the composer window. So that's the one thing that I leave mapped to the composer window that I use all the time, that I haven't made a keyboard shortcut out of. Okay, now remember, this is just really me sort of showing you what has worked for me for 20 to 25 years working in Media Composer. What I normally tell people to do is to start out with that configuration and then take it. And as you start to notice things that you utilize more than others, that's where you're going to start swapping things in and making these keyboard shortcuts or your keyboard settings unique for you so you can get the work done as quickly as possible. All right, now as always, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Video Guys. Don't forget, if you're looking for those Media Composer subscription licenses, you can check out the links in the show notes below. Use that coupon code of MC101 to get 5% off your Media Composer license purchase. And as always, if you have any questions, and this tutorial actually came about from a viewer question, don't hesitate to send those questions to me at kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. Thanks a lot for watching.